Can everybody do a microphone check just to make sure that when you POI it will have noise? First thing from OG, can you just like tap it twice or say check? Okay, OO, can you do a microphone check please? Just like tap it. Okay, CG? Okay, CO? Okay. Let's wait for CO's team member to come back before we start. Okay, since everybody is complete, several things as per usual. First things first, since we are in a live stream room, make sure that you are audible and utilizing the microphone at all times. For teams who are going to deliver POI, please utilize the microphone that is presented in your table. In regards to that as well, please refrain from discussing with your teammate too loud, as the microphone will also pick it up, so do be mindful of that. Secondly, as per usual, POI is highly encouraged. Make sure that you are delivering it in a way that is equitable. But last and most importantly, understanding the motion is about geopolitics and you're going to be live stream. Do keep name dropping to a minimum and just make sure that anything in your content and your examples, case studies will be as equitable as possible. I think that is all. My name is Grace or Gracia. I will be chairing this round alongside two of my panels, Najwa Tolinggi and also Toshi Atur Ilafi, alongside the other trainees that are Arina Aska and Ismet Nurhadi. To open the 6th preliminary round of NUDC 2024, I call upon the Prime Minister to open the debate under the motion. This House supports the establishment of the Global South as a formal organization. Prime Minister, the floor is yours. Here.
Check, check. Am I audible?
Yep, you're audible.
Okay. When we're talking about the global south is rising in many countries, that is in our side of the house is that we want to support the establishment of the Global South as a formal organization. Is that the first thing is that I want to tell you that how does the organizations look like? The first one is that these organizations in our side of the house is that it's open to support between non-Western countries. Is that the first that is by economically, is that we're talking about the economic crisis that happens on one country and the other country that are willing to help the other country in the community. They are willing to help the other country so that they can bound together, and then it becomes a fortune for at the end of the day for other country. And then the second is that the unexpected situation. We know that if it happens in 2020, when the pandemic happened, the coronavirus happened, why are we supporting, if it happens in the 2020, is that the Global South, as for the non-Asian, the non-Western countries, at the time, one country, for example, like Indonesia, if they are in a crisis, when at the time we don't know, we don't have the cure, we don't have anything to actually help with the bonding between the organization, is that they can help each other out. They can for the medical essentials, for the what happens in that time is that the education is very low, is that all the SDM is very low because all the students feeling a lack of motivation. So for example, at the time, Indonesia get helps from Singapore, and then the Singapore also get helps from China, and then they're just bonding together, and then this can create a good goal. And then back to the economical is that to cut import tax. What we mean by this is that the non-Western countries, if they have the community, they can support economically is that we can import, and they can import stuff, and then because they are cooperating, so it makes them so much easier. And then the second thing is that the investment to each other. The investment to each other, meaning that the cooperation between these countries, at the end of the day, they will have the investment from them helping each other. It will have like the friendship between each countries. And then I'm going to talk about why we need a formal organization. The first thing is that the difference between the independent and the formal, the independent and the formal organization. We're talking about the accessibility. Formal means legal. If we have a legal organization, meaning that we have access, we have rights because we are connected to the law. The access to a certain things, meaning that to reach a certain goal, to reach a certain things. For example, that there's a proposal that we need to do this. There's a proposal to help this a specific hunger population. With the accessibility to the law, to the access to the government, it make a lot more easier for a global south. So that is why we are supporting the establishment. And then it also makes the policy go easier. So that is the goal of the why we're supporting it as a legal organization. That is all from the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for that speech. Now I call upon a Leader of Opposition to open OO's case.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Wait. Oh yeah, can I use a timer?
Can LO provide a timer for them to be put up front? Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh,
okay.
we have,
Sure.
yeah.
You already got your own.
Okay. I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The Global South is not the answer for the South and Western power imbalance. Let me explain. A little bit of context that OG didn't give. What happening in the world is that yes, the Western country have more power than the South country, and it's in a lot of aspects, not only in economy, but also in the manpower and in political power and so much more, because they have established a lot more international organization in comparison to the to Southern country, right? The thing that is being talked about here is that the Global South as a formal organization happened because not only because of economy's objective, but also they have aspire to have more power over global affairs as a whole by challenging and opposing and having a critical view of Western policy. A little bit of my response to OG case. I feel like OG said a lot of things and said a lot of information of what the Global South actually is, but I don't think that their arguments have any content whatsoever to contribute to this discussion, because they have not answered the BOP on why this organization is so important to the South policy, or to the South policy and South standing in the global world. in the global world, and how doing this will actually better their standing between the Western policy and better their standing economically, and how it is better for the people of the South. They haven't answered that, and I think they should not be given contribution for any of that at all. Moving on to my argument, I have a few layers of my arguments. I'm gonna start first. The establishment of the Global South is not to help their country economy. The Global South politicians that are trying to establish the Global South as a formal organization have clearly stated in their formal entry for formal organization that they are trying, as I've said, critic Western and to challenge the Western, right? If Western authority, if they really solely want to create the organization to help each of their economy, each of these countries that are involved, like Brazil, China, India, and more of that. If they really want to create the organization to help each one of that country economy, then they wouldn't create an organization that are opposed to critical and are critical to the capital powerhouse which are located in the West. Mind me for being skeptic on the creation of this formal organization. I feel like there is a political objective behind the creation of this formal organization, not solely based on the good of people or solely based on the good of each of this country, but for this country to have power or to win against Western power, so that they could take more of the world economy and the possible worldwide market, right? If they really care about their economy, they would create a more civil organization as opposed to organization that openly hate on Western policy. I think we should question and be critical of this situation here for this reason. I'll admit, Western policy have given a huge provision and prerequisite towards economical agreement or economical trade with the West. So Western policy have given like provision and a lot of prerequisite towards trade with the South or country that are out of the Western out of that circle, right? But those provisions are not made as a political the provision that are made by Western policy are made not as a political discriminatory. It's not a political discrimination. This move is made as a preemptive to shield their own market from the insurgent and influx of foreign product and to keep their citizen capital circulation inside the country. So I think it's really not strategic to criticize the Western policy that are being made to shield those own Western country and not as a discriminatory or political move. I don't think it's very strategic to challenge that, because you look like you don't care also about the people that are in the West and the businesses that are in the West. Unlike the organization that existence you propose, right? The Global South is an organization that are born not only for the economical purpose, but as I quote, to strive more power over global affairs and to critique Western policy. Of course, as people, it's normal to worry because, okay, go.
Assuming that now you're more compliant to the West, how then suddenly they will open their market towards this Global South economy?
Okay, as I have explained, I think rather than making an organization that openly hate or like openly criticize Western policy, it's much better to create an organization of Southern economy with that are collating or working together and cooperating with with this Western country that are a powerhouse to a lot of capital and a lot of potential market, like, right? Of course, as people, it's normal to worry and to question the motive behind the making of this organization. Because in the formalization of this organization, the best case is that yes, with all the South power, you might be able to challenge the power of one Western country. But what happened is but what happened if, as a preventive measure, they enact sanction upon the South completely? Yes, your best case is that they could have collective power to challenge Western country. But what happened if if Western country challenged them back and create sanction, right? You might argue that these South countries might grow sanction immunity, like North Korea, for example. But even if you do eventually grow this sanction immunity, it will still take a lot of time for that to happen. There's a lot of these citizens that will still suffer, and that's why this motion should fall. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech, Leader of Opposition. Now I call upon the PM to close OG's case. Here.
The aim of the government bench is simple. We want the West to be fair in global trade and open up their market and stop all the manipulation and cheating through restrictive regulations that they have done before. I think opening opposition case is as simple as that we need to be compliant to the West, exactly because when you act aggressive, they will be more harsher with their laws or etc. We think this is the current status quo and it is not working. Everything will be explained and integrated within my argumentations. I think the structure of this speech is as simple as why then it is extremely necessary for Global South to formalize this organization because of 3 reasons. Number 1, we want to act against Western hegemony and cheating. Number 2, the United States as the global patron in the past has changed their economy policy. And number 3 then, we want to give the Global South a very powerful bargaining power to force the West to open their market, right? First things first, what does this Western hegemony and cheating mechanism looks like? It looks like this 3 picturization. First, look at the talks about concession in the Doha round talks from 2001 until 2011, where emerging markets demanding bigger concessions from the West, because the West has been so dominating and has been imposing trades based on their own discretion and what they deem as correct. What happened is the West refused, right? This is worse than with the expiration of Obama's TPA in 2007, where now no further talks about how the West will open up their market becomes more doom and no talks whatsoever. But second, it also looked like how many countries has opened their markets to the Western product of technologies, Western workforce or etc. But the West somehow slowly closed their markets from these emerging countries, or even slowly opening up their markets, which is extremely harmful for these countries, right? But thirdly, it also looks like how the West, particularly EU, forced countries to trade based on their demands, right? I.e., how European Union closed their market from Indonesian crude palm oil because we refuse to trade them or sell them raw nickel, right? In opening opposition, they might say that, well, this is done because we want to protect the environment or etc. But we think this is untrue, right? We think the reason why the West do this, exactly this is the subtle non-tariff barrier that the West want to impose on these countries and force them to the trade based on what the West really wanted, right? This is just a new form of protectionism other than tariff, and it is extremely unfair, right? This is the thing that we call as Western hegemony and cheating mechanism. But second, we think that the United States as the global patron of free trade has changed a lot, right? In the past, we think that the US is the one who championed for all countries to have an intertwined economy, proven by how US trades invest into China or etc. But in the current status quo, things are very different. 3 things. Number 1, United States is not the dominant economy anymore because now United States suffers from lagging productivity, China has outcompeted them, and now United States has shifted from the net creditor into the net debitor when they keep printing dollar, right? But second, we think that domestically in United States, there is less support for open world economy, right? Now labor movement and environmental activism is on the rise against free trade because they see free trade as somehow hurting the laborers, or maybe free trade makes a lot of pollutions or etc. This political sentiment is extremely important in the United States. Hence, we think it is just very unlikely for the United States to now support global trade, right? But number three then, we think that the rising hostility between United States and other countries like China, Russia, and etc., makes global trade becomes more pessimistic on our view, right? We think that assuming that Trump will now being voted again and how US economy has dropped under Biden, we think Trump's protectionism and conservatism on making America great again will be on the rise again, and hence it's very unlikely for the United States to enforce free trade. Why then this is important? We think that exactly when United States as the global hegemon now doesn't want free trade anymore, these countries will suffer or have no bargaining power against other Western countries, considering US is the strongest among them militarily and also economically, right? But thirdly, let's talk about the impact. What the opening government want is as simple as giving more bargaining power to the whole global south as a free world trade force, right? Notice that this kind of informal organization has already existed in the past, the moment Brazil and India tries to persuade the West to open their market, but it fails because it doesn't have any formal restrictions. No country really band together and have the same argument, but before that.
So you essentially want the South to dominate instead of the West?
Well, we think that since the West, maybe they're economically not that strong, but since they still have the military prowess or etc., we think that domination won't really exist in the way of a single group dominates the world, but rather how it will be multidimensional and each groups have their own advantages in this world. Continuing my case about bargaining power then. We think that the moment these countries band together, they can create a big economic power. Look at the small example of BRICS, right? But secondly, we think that formal organization also means formal alliance, and these countries should align all their economical will to the same goal, right? We think that these at least have a hope of success. This precedence comes from what happens in the past. In Uruguay talks, where the purpose of these countries want to ask for trade access to the West, Uruguay delegates wish for all the global South so that they could merge their economies to the Western countries. What happened in those talks? Number one, US, Europe, and Japan blatantly rejected and being defensive with all their economic policies. And number two, these countries didn't gain anything. But why then this happens? We think this happens because these countries is not yet formally allied yet, right? The West sees them as separated separated potential enemies. The moment you band them together, we think that this is the time exactly you've proved to the West that there is a big global entity that could economically defeat the West, right? And in the current status quo, notice that how these countries has also improved to a certain extent, right? BRICS, for instance, is already half the global population and half of the global economy, right? This means that the moment these countries group together and interact with each other with maybe free trade or etc., they can fight against the West for how Russia avoids West sanction. We're not saying we're supporting Russia anyway, but this is just a small example on how a country can group against non-Western country and thrive economically. Exactly because aggressive way will work on our instances, we think that all the passive nuances coming from the opposition on trying to be compliant to the West has extremely failed. Hence, we support the establishment of a new global South economic entity we're probably proposing.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, for that speech. Calling the LO to close the opening debate. Here.
Okay, test. For POI, you can raise your hand. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Case coming from OG is help each other as emerging country, your success, and yay, you won. There is no likelihood here. Pretty sure they will do it. For example, you need to, but at the end of the day, you need to characterize what kind of help that they will do. They will stop giving their product to Western country, for example, slowly or as soon as possible, to destroying the domination of Western country, because the characterization of Western country is they are kind of really depending natural resource from another country, because they have advanced machine but doesn't much like raw material. But why it will be really harmful in their side of the house? Because A, it will destroying price in status quo, because you cannot to deny that developing country still need finished good from Western country because they have efficiency in processing that natural resource. It means the effect that they will do will domino to developing country. But B, even if you can protect the developing country like doing investment, firstly, we kind of questioning the likelihood, because rather than investing to random developing country, you most likely just allocate your money to make your manufacture become bigger than before. But secondly, you also impose them to lose benefit from the Western country, because accept the money, it means that you need to fully pro to global South. Why this response is really important? Because A, domino effect that I said before, it means you will destroying the supply chains that currently happen in the status quo. It means there will be instability in economic. So most likely, even if you achieve your bargaining power, like OG said, you cannot deny that you still get effect from that instability. It means your demand still decrease, you have a responsibility to pay more to fix the condition, and etc. But B, you make developing countries suffering because they lost their demand, not have efficiency, but you still their natural resource. It means even you achieve your successness as this organization, you still need to facing up the retaliation from the Western country, you get criticized by the developing country, so your goals will zero sum at the end of the day. This is the first reason why you cannot to support it. But coming from my contribution here, how manifestation of the establishment will bring chaotic condition in economic. It will directly engage to OG. Firstly, let's analyze what the purpose they want to criticize Western economic and what kind of the correlation here. A lot of developing, also developed countries still dependent with US dollar, for example, because US dollar still be the main currency that they will use in the status quo. In the same time, Western like US still have their personal problem in their country, like for example, high inflation. This is why they're raising their interest rate to make people, for example, like their civil international investors saving their US dollar or buying US dollar as investment asset. This condition happen for many times and make an assumption that Western country really authority with their power. But if you analyze it, you already know that it's a common solution that you take in the high inflation condition. So it's not, for example, like, so it's not have a bad direction to another country, purely to save their economic. Because when the currency from Western countries still dominating, China as their opponent will lose their investor, since it's favorable to buy, for example, like US dollar facing up with appreciation in their value of their currency. But at the end of the day, if we talk about fair or not, I think it's something that we cannot to be a clash in this debate, because when we talk about fairness, firstly, as a developing country or another country that you need to like getting a debt, I think we believe in IMF that controlled by Western country is the most reliable. Then you talk about the BRI or OBOR that really get it, like getting developing country to get trapped in the debt and etc. But secondly, I think when we talk about the Western country, they still have a humanity, for example, how they are supporting the war and etc. So they still have an interest to do ethical action, for example, doing something good for another country because they don't want to like getting a label, for example, like China and etc. This is why at the end of the day, fair is not something that you need to debate here. But B, it's also linear with BRICS purpose, like what they said, mainly to do the dollarization, because they want to upper than Western economic, also looking up for a partner to success their plan. It proven to you why at the end of the day they will use developing country as their tools to achieve their goals. So we cannot to justify it in the principle. The likelihood coming for their interest is have more power over global affairs, right? It means they cannot to do that by themselves. What will they do? Two things. Firstly, make sure developing country not give their product to export to the Western country. But secondly, they will encourage developing country to work and use their currency to strengthen their power in the currency. Why it's really harmful? Because the vulnerable actor here is the developing country that, get manipulated by these certain people. But what kind of harm here? You will lose your opportunity as developing country to get like economic benefit from its superpower. For example, like when you are just not getting, not make or establish this organization, you can still like getting a free tax export from USA, or you can still like getting a demand from the China. You can like just giving a service to this kind of to country, because you, for example, because at the end of the day in this side you will impose them to just to pick into just one option. But before that, any POI? Okay, Why this case is really important? Because regardless the plan of Global South is success or not, it will really harmful for the developing country because they are just suffering with their economic and you cannot do like getting responsible about it. But at the end of the day, it's just like getting harm to for the Global South itself, because at the end of the day, even like you are can to doing something retaliation to the USA or another Western country, at the end of the day, you still can get a lot of harm there that really like not really beneficial for you even if your establishment is success. But when we are not supporting it, it means what we want. It means you don't need to make this organization. Like the competition in the economic will happen naturally without destroying each other. We don't need this kind of organization. For example, if we talk about China, if you are just like, for example, share about your product quality, you can get a cheap product and etc. I think you can still get your successness right without this organization. But at the end of the day, the delta is in our side, you are not giving a harm. For example, like you are just intentionally doing like destroying the USA, for example, economic, and in giving a domino effect from another a lot of country that currently happen in the status quo. Because at the end of the day, if your target as this organization is make how the emerging country, for example, can get their welfare and etc., I have proven to you why you cannot to get that when you are just doing or criticize or you are just doing something really bad to the Western country. Because at the end of the day, if we talk about the economic, they are really correlated with another its country. Because when we talk about the economic, also how the process of the international of the market, you need to know that every country have their absolute power. Absolute power, it means they have her power, they have their, for example, like plus point in their economic, and this is why when you want to make how the market in the international will be look good, you need to make sure how the diplomacy from each other, for example, like another its country, it can be better. Because at the end of the day, what you want is you can get a cheaper product, right? You don't want to make, for example, like war in economic that giving a really harm for all of the actor in this debate. So this is why at the end of the day, in the government side, you just make how the condition of the economic aggregately will really worse, which is like, for example, like its country cannot to get the, for example, absolute advantage that coming from another country. For example, you can get gas from Russia or get corn from the Ukraine and etc. This is why at the end of the day, it will make how the condition of economic will really worse, even, for example, like after pandemic COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition. I call upon Member of Gov to open the closing debate. Here. Thank you, OO, for borrowing the timer.
Testing, okay, nice. This is so cool. Okay, starting. Panels, I think that currently, what the current status quo is the fact that whenever the the global South country is trying to actually fight for better growth, so if they want to try actually to be better economically, they will always be curbed by the West in itself. Whenever they actually try to be better, for example, in China, when they actually become powerful enough that is being noticed by the US, they become curbed by the United States and stuff, and the Western hegemony in itself. We believe that in the current status quo, without the proper backing of formal organizations, what is currently happening is that it will only like segregate, it will only like differentiate between the global South and global North, and it's only going to solidify the position that they will always better than us in the South. So my contributions will be divided into my arguments and also responses towards what the opening opposition has said. So basically, I'm going to explain to you more about the benefits on what actually the formal organization is going to actually look like more, and how that this will actually be better to compete, and then the counterfactual on what is going to happen in their case. So we need to actually like categorize, we need to actually like contextualize more first like on what is going to happen in the current status quo if we actually go and make a formal organization. Like we believe that firstly is that it is going to be important. This is the fact that there will be united under the same purpose, right? That means that because they are all, for example, they have the same history, because they are all oppressed by the West, and also because they are because they all have like similar geographical backgrounds and such, we believe that there will be the same process also to actually combat the Western that is currently happening, that is currently like oppressing in the South. We believe that that secondly is the fact that because of this, because they are being not below the same purpose, that means that there will be like more likely of likelihood that there will be more collaboration that is going to happen. And also thirdly is the fact that transfer of skills is actually going to be easier, right? This means that whenever they are going to collaborate, that means that there will be like more grounds for them to actually like to try and to like collaborate in more of their technologies and such and such. And fourthly, lastly, is the fact that competition will still be happening there, even inside the formal organization itself, because that means that because they still have their own national interests, and this will not actually be detrimental. This will not backlash this idea of in the standard banner and such and such. But why is this actually important? This means that we will actually have like better competition, right? We will actually be able to fight for dominance and against the Western hegemony. I think that the harms that the opening opposition is trying to actually convince you about the fact that there will be like decreasing price and all such, about the currency that is going to be destabilizing. I think that this is actually this is not going to happen, because in the end of the day, we actually contend the fact that Global South is still Global South. We actually have like less of a starting point. We still don't have like a good enough power, enough influence to actually be able to dominate in the first place, right? I think that we have already lost that position ever since that we have been oppressed, ever since that we have been colonized by the West in the first place. And at the same time, that means that the only thing that we can do by uniting under the same banner is only going to be able so that we can actually contend more to the fact that we can actually define ourselves even better in itself. So what is actually better competition actually grants you, right? I think that in the better competition does not actually make it so that there will be like less or like better competition and fighting for dominance. It's not going to actually make it so that there will be like one institution or like one group, or like for the Western, for example, is going to be like experiencing their downfall, right? I think that this is going to happen is that there will be going to be like more likely on that there will be like competition in terms of there will be like a lot of price decreasing and a lot of products that are trying to be like being improved so that they can able to contend with the other people. Because I think that when there is like I've already explained to you that about how that there will be like more likely on people from Global South contending from their own competition. Not yet. Wait. So I think that this will actually be able to make it so that there will be like better competition in as such. And then at the very least, I think that by doing so, we have like, because I think that we as Global South, we are like morally composed on like a lot of countries that are strong enough that is already like emerging economies, right? That means that we, by uniting in the same banner, that means that we will give us like more leverage against the West and the Global South in itself. But also more likely on what is actually going to be the counterfactual in their case in itself, right? We believe that what is going to happen without a formal organization, there will be three things that is going to happen. Firstly is the fact that there will be less likely of a cooperation, right? I think that currently, because as South Asia, even like in the current Asia, or for example, like just the Global South in general, I think that there will still like be a lot of competition and to actually one up another to actually gain more national interest. We believe that in this case, we think that not yet, please, let me finish. I think that this national interest will actually last over like the general region. This means that they will actually only fight against like each other and not actually go and to actually fight for dominance in the other regions that is actually so much more powerful than what is currently. So that this means that they will actually like be blinded on what is actually the true purpose in itself. This means that there will be like more people that is actually going to suffer in these these developing countries or these Global South countries because of this struggle, and it's actually between this Global South in itself, even though that they actually need to be united again. Opening PI.
Hello. Okay, in order to have a healthy competition, you need to consider the losses you can endure during this competition. The West has power to compete, but they also have the power to win. Considering their track records, do you think they're ready?
Sure. I think that I've already explained to you about how the Global South is actually already like already like powerful enough, right? I think that even like the Western hegemony in itself, I think that their power actually derives from the fact that they have colonized us before. That means that also that they have actually like more their laborers are actually more from the Global South in itself, like or their resources. They're all like coming because they have derived it from ourselves. I think that we have all of like the resources needed. We have all the manpower needed to actually like dominate between them. But secondly, also on the counterfactual, we believe that the countries from the global south will not be able to contend, right? Because like Western hegemonies will always try to curb competitions. But thirdly, also on the fact that if, for example, we try to another counterfactual which is collaborating with the others, I think that this will actually not be beneficial because it will not be effective because like the initiative will always come from the West, right? Because like there will be like less of incentive for the global south to actually do so because like West obviously wanted to expand their hegemony, but also like from the global south, but we don't have like enough influence to actually like convince them to be in a collaboration because like what do I actually have to do so, right? But also like see like even worse because of this proximity, because of we are being in the same region, there will be like more likely of an exploitation that is going to happen in this case, and that is why propose.
Thank you, government member. Calling opposition member to open CO's case. Let's just keep the timer on the podium aja ya. Pinjam ya. Oh, thank you so much.
Check. My name is Rama. I'm from IPB. Anyway, I have my institution here for documentation, so I'm consented for being recorded by my institution. But yeah, I would like to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. First, let's define what is actually the formal institution because none of this team is actually brought what is the delta between formal institution and what is actually happening in the status quo right now. One, there's a rigid structure that this institution would have a name, for example, right? There will be a well currency or etc. And there's also a specific name. It is the same case like Europe, for example, right? Which by the end of the day, there would be lots of forum or mediation that goes, which each country have to send their representation to talk about their economic, right? But then second, they would basically have to collect their resources collectively or their economic collectively and keep the same resources for production. Example, Europe by the end of the day order only in one specific countries, or maybe Europe by the end boycotting specific countries like Indonesia palm oil, for example, right? That's how formal institution work in status quo. 3, there will be a specific regulation in the internal of that organization. Example, in ASEAN, we have Masyarakat Ekonomi ASEAN, for example, which by the end is regulate the mobilization of these workers in ASEAN. 4th would be an agreement that would be created by this organization that's going to be rigid and they would have to be prioritize their formal organization before they going outside of their organization. That's why it's going to be harmful. But first, let's define why by the end of the day it's fine without even it's fine for this country to be able to create this to make their economic better without even making an alliance or formal organization. One, we see how in status quo there's a formal bilateral that exists in status quo, which is enough, which there is no any limitation for you to go to any other countries, right? You can do trade with anyone in globally, and even if you are having a cold war with some country, you still be able to do that trade from the very first place, right? That's why Russia still giving their oil into USA even if they are under embargo, for example, right? But then second, there's also interdependency that's already created in status quo, which by the end of the day it's already progressing enough that there is no any exclusive product in status quo, which by the end each product in status quo have any substitution. Example, gasoline exists all over the world, or maybe military product is not only produced by Western, right? There's also lots of countries that also able to produce that, which by the end of the day, principally all countries have to behave or make a relationship towards other country only based on economic, because we talk about economy and it's supposed to be based on price, quality, or demands or needs that actually happen in the status quo of that countries, right? But then see, the interest of all these countries is basically just to grow or get some mutual benefit, which all countries would be able to willing to invest in any other countries that is already existing status quo. So that's we believe it's enough anyway from the very first place. But then we see
see why a global South created is not really ideal from the very first place, because one, it's not based on needs or economical interest, as I already told you, because principally we supposed to start it with economical interest, but instead it all really start with the similarity of political value from the very first place, right? We see how all of these countries have conflict with Western example. All of these countries is non-Western countries. All of these countries are being colonized by Western countries example, right? And the worst, even in the worst case, like Indonesia, for example, do not have any direct conflict. They basically have a conflict with example Indonesia. It's being support Palestine, meanwhile Western countries support Israel, for example, right? That's why it is also having a conflict. And also Indonesia example is a Muslim countries, and there's lots of Islamophobia and stuff. So that's why basically all of the countries combine based on the interest of political, and it's not real, and it's not ideal. Second, it's also based on the similar feeling of left out in the status quo. But what is actually happening in status quo? We see how in status quo there's lots of potential conflict that happen in status quo. Russia, Ukraine, Russia, US, China, Middle East conflict, intervention of USA in Taiwan, China conflict, etc. You name it. There's also lots of Western domination in status quo, which USA bank monitor impacting all of the money liquidity exists in status quo, right? The increasing of bank interest would by the end of the day impacting any other countries currencies strong, is it going to be strong or weak by the end of the day, right? But then second, Western already create an alliance or formal organization from the very first place. Example, NATO, there's lots of interaction between all of these countries in NATO, example, right? There's also a United of Europe, for example, which they by the end having a specific currency, and all by the end of the day, we believe would giving a trade-off, which by the end there's also specific countries that trade-off, but we believe this manifestation will be fine because we already offer you a contra proportion proposal, which is the bilateral and interdependency, and we'll prove to you why it's going to be harmful from the very first place. Next contribution would be about why by the end of the day, even without Western domination, it's going to be still risky from the very first place. One, merging your market means you have to merging your resources or economic activity, and we see how all of this activity will be interconnected from the very first place, right? Each economic dynamic which impacting all. Example, we see how in United of Europe, example, Greece having a conflict internally, which by the end of the day impacting all of the euro currency example, right? That's going to be impacting the whole organization or geographical currency, right? The prerequisite of this formal organization to be able to stand from the very first place is one, you are independent and not dependent in any other regulation outside of your countries. But the problem is in the status quo, these South global countries is really rely on help outside of the allies. Example, they also rely on World Bank that's run by Western, or maybe the loan that's actually given by Western countries, example, right? But then B, they have to be able to manage all of the human resources and establish all of the internal regulation or internal conflict that's happened in their own status quo. But the problem, their internal is not really stable from the very first place. Most are developing countries and their economic growth is not there. And second, they also have lots of internal conflict. Example, tribal conflict in South Africa, India with Pakistan and Bangladesh, etc., you name it. By the end, it's going to be impacting the infestation that's going to be able there, because even investor is really think about the condition of the countries, and that's going to be impacting the liquidity and all of that, right? And also second, it's going to be giving bigger responsibility if something happen in India, for example, they're impacting other countries, example China or Indo, right? As that country, you don't want that to be happen from the very first place, right? Because it's not going to be safety. But then next, let's talk about why this formal organization is bad, because one, about concentration and competition in CG is going to be bad because it's going to giving a polarization, which giving a reaction back to Western, which is the prerequisite of argument that's going into our case. Thank you.
Thank you, member of up. Calling Gov Whip to close Gov Bench case.
In 3, 2, and 1. Okay, first panels. I think all of you already cleared your mind about how this debate isn't about how these southern countries wants to have their hands on this global market, but instead all of this debate only talks about how they will challenge or even make their next victim which is the Western media, Western part, to at least become the next victim of this economical world. We believe that in our side, we already told you about, we want to make this economical world to become more diverse and equal to everyone in every part of the world, which means that there will be no attackers, there will be no victim, which means that this will lead more to more safe area within the world. I would like to extend first about how my first speaker wants to extend this argument about what less cooperation is. Less cooperation that caused by the countries' diversional goal and would likely to make their own people to suffer because of that. It's likely to have that, because that's likely to impose to them, and that's why the less cooperation that made by no global rising, which means that this would lead to make less cooperation. That's what my first speaker trying to say. And kind of all, Western did so many incentives to make certain organizations that the reason they do that so that their national goal only can be achieved, which I mean is that the Western part of the world wants to make a certain organization with other part of the world just to make their national goal to be achieved without considering any of that other country goal to be achieved too, which means that this only goes one way. Okay, moving to my rebuttal and stuff. Okay, first of all, why uniting this southern part of the world will make this economic world terms better. This likely to happen because these southern countries known as being the consumers of this economic part of the world, and the biggest market is there, and the West are thriving. The reason why the West are thriving is because they capitalize on this, and that's why with forming a formal organization that consists of these global south rising countries could lead to a more diverse, competitive, and less monopoly by certain political spectrum, in which will be more beneficial to everyone included in this formal organization. Second of all, we believe that we are not combating the hegemony, but we believe that we want to make our hands at least reach this economical world, which means that we doesn't want to combat or to make everyone anything to be a victim. And that's why this would lead to more diverse. That's why. And kind of all, we would like to inform you about how the horizontal harm is. The Western-led economy tends to monopolize the market of these southern countries, in which they export their product to these southern countries. That makes their local merchants couldn't compete with their product because they are cheap, have a significantly good quality, and easy to buy. And that's why forming a formal organization would lead to these small players in this local country to have their chance. Because of that, these local merchants doesn't have their hands on the global market, even in their own country, which means that they couldn't strive, and the Western products will be striving more. And that's why, if this formal organization is being created, we believe that their chance of these small players will find their ways to the market itself, to the free market itself, in which benefit the countries. It's the visa, which leads to two benefits, which is reaching the benefit the countries the visa because of the rising the export within their countries, and kind of all, the well-being of the people itself will be more striving because they can manage their own idea. Okay, moving. I want to say about. Wait, let me say about my rebuttal first. Okay, first of all, I want to talk about how the OO case. First of all, they said that the existence of this organization isn't about make the country's economy better, in which the politician said that it challenged the existence of the Western system. It's still justifiable in a case that how these West countries got their power from. Like I said before, it's from the power to negate the market's supply, which could lead to disastrous state of the world. And these Western countries have that humongous power, and that's led them to being a key actor, and because of that, they could strive from this, and that's what's wrong with this and then what's wrong with this southern country to make a good political power from this, and it still can achieve the well-being of their people, in which the O wants in the first place. And it's kind of all I want to talk about the O again. They said that it could crash the market price because the developed countries become vulnerable. We believe that it won't happen due to these developed countries got another source of product, and because of that, in cost, we believe that it will be cheaper in cost, and it might be a lot of them, and because the distance between another country with these southern countries will be very much relatively close to each other. So the distribution will be very much easier and very much cheaper, and will be much easier to access, etc., and make this country to stabilize their price within the country. It's kind of all I want to rebut the CO aspects about. They said that I would like to challenge the idea that they said that they failed to realize that these Western countries tend to, we believe that they doesn't realize that Western countries tend to discourage the country itself to use their own resource and force them to export it with a cheap price and import them with the finished product to make some, to the same country that provide the crude material with them. We can use the example of Pertanian, that they export the crude oil and export it to outside, and they buy it again with 10 times the price. And lastly, I would like to distinguish more about how we would like to distinguish ourselves from the opening government. We believe that, first of all, I want to say that their narrative, their way to make the southern countries to become the next champion of the world economy. We believe that in our side, we believe that the idea that opening bench proof is that they need to, the other side part of the world, which is the Western, to be next team of the subject, and which in our side, we will make the world shift to more diverse and equal chance for everyone to get their hands, and we're bowing down to anything, and we would like to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Government Whip, for that speech, calling Opposition Whip to close Opposition's case and this debate as a whole. Here.
Sorry. Okay. Can I take out the mic? Okay. I'd like to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think the most important contributions coming from closing oppositions from the very first place in this debate was to contextualize what is the delta between formal institutions and what is currently happening in status quo. The first thing that you need to understand, there is a reason why BRICS doesn't formalize themselves right now. There is reasons why Brazil, India, South Africa, and China doesn't formalize BRICS as a formal institutions, because exactly there are no urgency to do so in status quo. I'm going to explain what is the urgency by explaining the comparative to closing government. Closing government told you several things. One, because of these formal institutions, there is going to be easier transfer of knowledge happens, there is going to be more leverage against the West, and bigger markets are here and there, and essentially they're talking about, you know, the South is already powerful enough, why don't we make a formal institutions out of it? The weighing and the comparison is, Rama already told you that there is a risk coming from making a formal institutions, especially when we talk about the creations of nations, that is bigger and larger, for example. There is risk of if one nation fails, then the rest of the institutions are going to feel the harm of it. There is a reason why British exits the EU from the very first place, because they wanted to be independent and they wanted to get out of the risk from what is happening on the European nations. This then weighs on the urgency that comes from CG, because they explicitly claims that the South is already powerful enough. Then why you need to actually take an extreme measures and take more risk in order to make a formal institutions out of it. Closing government out of this debate just because of the simple reasons of no urgency. But let's talk about opening government in this debate. They explain several things. One, the South are very low in HR and technology, which is a fake matter. We see that in Indonesia, for example, we are currently facing a 2045 golden era, for example. In China, there is an increasing technology in industry. In India, for example, they are very, dominating in technology themselves, right? But secondly, they talk about, okay, the West need to be fair on trade, and now this is the right time because the USA is getting weaker and weaker. There is less support from open economy themselves. How do you weigh this from closing opposition to opening government then? First, Rama already told you, if you make same currencies, risk of failures are also high. A, one country fails, everyone fails. B, sure, this means that sure, there is going to be a benefit, a marginal of benefits in their best scenario that maybe the trade is going to be very fast, for example, or it's going to be very easier, low cost and whatever. But in status quo, those benefit is not exclusive on opening government side of the house. We can already see informal trade, like agreements happens from India to Brazil, for example, in regard to exchange of their natural resources. It means that at least on our side of the house, we'd like to take the trade-off of steady improvements as opposed to fluctuative improvements coming from opening government, which is very, very beneficial. If you think about it, on our side of the house, the benefits are more, manifested, and it's much, much more stable. But secondly, they talk about, okay, the reason why IPOI do you want to be dominating or not is because we want to see what is the purpose of opening government itself. They wanted the South to do better. But if we look at the motion itself is not about as actor motion, for example, as South, but it's a third person view, which means one, you need to actually look this from a third, like helicopter views and see which one gives you the benefit the most. On our side of the house, you need to take care of countries that supports free trade, such as Indonesia, for example, like Rama told you. But you cannot do that with the segregations of sides in opening government. Because A, every Asian nations will get bad name unless OG explain, all government batch explain why every South nations wanted to be included in these formal institutions from the very first place. For countries such as Indonesia, who are benefited the most from trade on the West, this is going to be very, very bad. Because Rama told you that once you make these institutions, there is going to be rigidity and limitations in trade themselves. You need to prioritize trading inside of the institutions before you trade to the Western country themselves. The weighing is, on closing opposition, we give you better protections on these countries that supports free trade and interdependency. Rama said that this is very possible, and this is why the current status quo, you don't need to actually, make some kind of things because it's safe. Yes.
In opposition, we already see that you guys are arguing that interdependency exists and it is risky for these countries. But doesn't it mean that the West is also under risk and it will be easier for us to drag them to negotiation table and avoid mutual destruction? Why don't we want to achieve bargaining power?
You said it yourself when I asked you, do you want dominations? You said, I don't know, because every country also can dominate in other ways. So I don't necessarily understand, once you dominate in this kind of stuff and when the West is already weakened on your side of the house, you need to take these extra precautions with the risk that Ram already provided in this debate. So it's like, taking risk for just small improvement anyways on your side of the house. But last comparison on opening opposition. Basically, opening opposition told you that the current status quo enough and stable. Any formal alliance will disrupt the stability in the form of sanctions and in the form of, like destroying the supply chains and lose the chance to develop as developing countries. But why then CO take this point over OO? Because one, we actually explain why South is good without formal institutions. We explain and characterize more in one, free trade, and two, interdependency. Means that without action, yes, we prove to you the likelihood and the characteristics on why then, the South is good even though there is a chance of sanctions and whatnot, right? But two, CO explains about how economy translate to politics and the other way around, because Rama told you that economical policies are based on politics. South and West are different politically. If you create some kind of extreme measures, you're going to be prepared, you have to prepare for extreme reactions coming from the West as itself, right? When you actually make this, as a formal institutions, which is the extreme measures, you need to be prepared of the sanctions and, the harms that are becoming from the West initially. So at the end of the day, we actually managed to, explain to you that this political point of view is something that is certain and will happen regardless of what economical things that you are going to prepare in your, policies. And that's why IPB oppose. Thank you.
Thank you, Abu Shinwib, for that speech, and thank you everyone for the debate. Right now, you can go wait outside while the judges are going to deliberate, as per usual. Yeah, thank you, and congratulations for finishing the last prelim of the day.